This time, Scotland 78, how Ally's Tartan Army got to the brink of rescuing World Cup ignominy.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt to decide once and for all who is the greatest football team of all time. Sometimes, like when Brian Clough confidently says he's the best manager in the game, greatness is assured. Other times, Christian Gross shows you his travel card and a different fate awaits. My name's Graham Dunn, desperately checking Oxford United's Scottish legends as we speak. And joining me as ever is my fellow self-appointed arbiter of football greatness, Jamie Rooney.
Graham, hello again. Great to be in your company doing this once more time. Christian Gross is a great reference. I do remember the intrigue of Christian Gross and the pride that he showed with his travel card. That was only 15, 20 years ago. You can't imagine any Premier League manager ever coming to a club via the Metro these days. It's just unheard of. It's a different world. Bring back Christian Gross.
He was a special talent. And delighted to join us. We are going to look at the Scotland 1978 team, the Ally MacLeod team. And we're joining us this week. We have Stefan Shaw. Hi, Stefan.
Hi, Graham. Hi, Jamie. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Now, as I was saying in the introduction there, I was desperately trying to think of a good Oxford United Scottish player. I'm sure there must be one. I'm really, really struggling. We had Derek Lilly played for a couple of years, but this isn't someone who's troubling the troubling the scorebook of great Scottish football legends.
No, you had Jamie Mackey, didn't you? Recently?
Oh, Jamie Mackey.
Yeah,
yes.
Good shout.
Oh, no, he's definitely good. He would definitely count. But it's interesting, going back to that, as you will, the 78 team, that was a time when Scottish players playing in England were almost the dominant force.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure we'll come on to the squad in a bit of detail later, but if you look at the teams where Scotland drew their talent from, it's amazing, really. You know, we've got European champions, Liverpool, Manchester United, 3 players from them, 3 players from Nottingham Forest, who just won the league in England as well. I mean, it's quite impressive, particularly if you look now when we're really struggling to have any sort of Premier League players at all in the Scotland team.
The one I always remember coming down was Frank McAvenny when he came down to join, play for West Ham. Was he St Mirren and then St Mirren Celtic, or the other way around? When he came down was the bit where there was a TV strike, and so it was the one time there were no pictures of any, and I think McAvenny scored in his first 10 games, and no one knew who he was.
Yeah, and I think that was the season that, I don't know if West Ham finished second, but they were certainly second for most of the year, weren't they? McAvenny and Tony Cottee, yeah.
That's correct, yeah. I finished, they were competing with Liverpool and Everton that season, yeah, during the peak years of Everton and the great Liverpool teams as well.
It's a proper dream team. Now, obviously we did the podcast on Saint Etienne 2 or 3 weeks ago, who got to the Champions League final, which was played at Hampden Park, and you don't really sort of think about that, but it was a big thing in Scotland at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a massive thing for some reason. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was 1976 that was, and it was. I mean, no one had ever heard of St Etienne, to be honest. Well, I hadn't. But we had a school assembly where the headmaster, he was getting us all kind of G'd up for it, and pretty much everyone in Glasgow was going for Les Verts, because support the underdog. As you say, the other connection in that last pod as well was the Panenka penalty as well. I guess it's all leading quite nicely into the sort of 1978 qualifying campaign, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we are going to look this week at Scotland 1978. I love this story, and I've been very keen to look at this, not partly because this particular World Cup is sort of quite etched on my memory. It's probably one of the first ones, well, definitely the first one I had any awareness of. But it's not necessarily because this. I mean, we can have the debate about whether this is Scotland's greatest ever team. And it's not even necessarily that this is the closest that Scotland ever got to qualifying at one of these tournaments. But I don't think there's another story that sets the narrative of what becomes Scotland at big tournaments from this moment on, which is this weird combination of a bit of self-destruction, a bit of glory, and a bit of glorious failure. It sort of seems to sum everything up, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you probably need to go back to 1974, really. I mean, I think that's an important part of the story because there was a great feeling, I think, with that Scotland team, who were a really good team, that they were just so unlucky. You know, they went out without losing a game. I think they went out on goal difference. And I think before 74, 74 was the first time they qualified for ever, maybe.
Yeah, first time.
So there was no great expectation then, but the team did so well. And I think probably that kind of built up the momentum, if you like, or euphoria, whatever. It probably all stemmed from there. You know, if you even look at some of the home internationals, Scotland 1976 was the first time that they'd actually, I think, won the home international since 1967. And it's one of the Scotland games I can remember very well. When it's the one, I think, where Dalglish hits the ball through Clemency's legs. I don't know if you guys remember that one. And so the team was starting to build then. Then 1977 was obviously the famous match at Wembley, where Scotland famously won and then took half of Wembley home with them, really. So it was definitely building. And I think that sort of mid to late 70s, I think Scotland were probably objectively looking, even, you know, from a non-Scottish perspective, probably were the dominant force in British football at the time.
That 74 team is a cracking one because actually it's got a fascinating group because obviously you've got Brazil who is sometime and we've got the fantastic Zaire who we've done on an earlier podcast who, you know, had to be the favourite team of all time and I think it's Yugoslavia is the other one in the group there, and to come away out of that, you know, I think it was a creditable 2-0 against Brazil, and I think maybe the only kind of criticism of that team was that they didn't really go hard enough against Zaire.
Yeah, that's probably true. That was undoubtedly the downfall because I think, didn't Yugoslavia beat them 7-0 or something?
Yeah, I think it was 8 or 9, actually. I think it's a real strange one, though, because the Zaire story is incredible, Stefan. We've covered Zaire 74. And it almost like it's fate for Scotland. It almost runs through the good or bad fortune that Scotland have had through football. Because I think if the fixture list would have been slightly different, as we learned with Zaire, they were protesting over money. So when they played Yugoslavia in the second game, after playing Scotland and losing 2-0, they deliberately went out to lose the game. So if the fixture list had been different in that World Cup and Zaire played Yugoslavia, then they had their protest over money and Scotland was the second fixture, I think history would have been written in a slightly different way. But I just think it kind of like, it almost feels to me rather unfairly possibly, and correct me if I got this wrong, but it's just typical Scottish luck when it comes to football. It just doesn't seem to kind of rub their way when it does seem to be rubbing the other way for others.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. It's funny, isn't it? Looking back, just something as simple as the order of fixtures can make a massive difference. You know, there's quite a lot of controversial incidents. I think looking at the Argentina World Cup, because I do remember this as well, that I wasn't allowed to stay up and watch them because the Argentina matches were always on like at 1 o'clock in the morning our time because they wanted Argentina to play after everyone else, so they knew what they had to do. Things like that, you know.
Yeah, there's a little bit of suspicion going on there.
Yeah, I think the first time I really saw Argentina was in the final because, like I say, I wasn't allowed to stay up to watch them.
Yeah.
This was a bit strange, but yeah.
That 74 performance was really strong. And I guess that, would Dennis Law still have been playing then?
Yeah, Dennis Law was in there, definitely. Billy Brown.
Dennis Law and a young Kenny Dalglish.
Yes, I think he was probably just breaking through into the team then. He was still at Celtic. And, by 78, he really was in his prime, though. Probably,
yeah.
He was he really was top drawer. And, you know, I think that when you look back on like the qualifying campaign, he was a different class, and he probably made the difference.
I think it was more of a sentimental decision to take Dennis Law for his contribution to football and Scottish football in general. I think he was carrying an injury. He was coming to the end of his footballing career, and with Scott to 22, as it was at the time, it seemed a logical reason to take Dennis Law. But unfortunately, the world had seen the best in Dennis Law by the time the World Cup reached Scotland in 74.
So the Scotland embark on that qualification, and they're still managed by Willie Ormond, I think, at the time. Yeah. I just love the old-fashioned qualification kind of rule. So in that instance, they're in a group of three, a qualified group of three, which seems really quite strange. A group through with Czechoslovakia and Wales, but actually, presumably Czechoslovakia are I don't know if that tournament was seeded, but they are European champions, aren't they? And I think Scotland lose the first game, then beat Wales to bring it level, and
crucially as well, Wales beat Czechoslovakia. So you've got around the first 3 round of matches, because there's only 6 games, as you said, there's only 3 teams, and all the teams are level on 2 points each after playing each other.
And that's the point that Willie Ormond, I think he takes over at Hearts, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And cue the entrance of Ally MacLeod. Now, I was sort of quite interested in, I think probably you see this all the time now in the international game, where actually the best managers in the game don't end up as national managers. But I think still in those days, the idea would have been, certainly in England at that stage, the best manager would, Bobby Robson took over in 82 or whenever it was. Obviously, Brian Clough didn't for kind of other reasons. But in Scotland, you sort of had this weird, it seems like a bit of a challenge where you've got a series of fantastic managers, probably the best managers out there, many of whom don't manage the national team, or if they do, for only a relatively short stage. And I think even at that point, their first choice would have been Jock Stein, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. It wasn't really. I guess international managers always a bit of a strange one. When's the ideal time for you to take it? I guess is the thing, isn't it? Is it on your way up? I think in those days it was probably pretty well paid, whereas that's certainly with the Scotland job. I'm pretty sure it's not half as well paid. If you're in the Premier League, David Moyes or something, he's not going to take the Scotland job, is he? But I think in those days, it probably was on a par. I wouldn't have thought money would have made a massive amount of difference. So Ally MacLeod was very much, he did obviously good work with Ayr, but 1 year at Aberdeen, and I think that was it, wasn't it? He took Aberdeen, they won a cup, and they came second in the league. So he did great and brought some good players through. So actually, he probably was, the up and coming manager of the time, and also the press did. Well, at least before the World Cup, they absolutely loved him, because he was rent a quote, wasn't he? He was the guy that would enthuse his players, and the press, everybody loved him, really.
You could definitely imagine Ally MacLeod interviewing well. You could definitely imagine him selling himself.
Absolutely, not just himself, but also the whole Scotland team. He kind of made everyone believe, I think, and. Yeah, in retrospect, it probably doesn't look so good. But I can even remember at the time, just the whole, Ally's Tartan Army was just. I guess you guys must have got it in England a bit. Maybe times were a bit less cynical. Maybe you did all get behind Scotland. I don't know. It's the first time I ever remember sort of going into a tournament with expectation. And I've never ever felt that since then at all. So yeah,
it definitely feels, looking back, the whole of the United Kingdom was behind Scotland going in that World Cup. They were the sole British representation. It reminded me a bit, when I've looked back on it, of how the United Kingdom adopted the Republic of Ireland in 1994 after every single home nation failed to qualify for the World Cup in the USA. But looking back for Scotland, there definitely was this swell of joy behind them, and it feels like it was right behind the whole country. And there's a documentary made as well about the Scotland team before they go to 78, which is talking their chances up, talking about the greatness of this particular team. So I definitely feel, on reflection, the whole country was behind Scotland, and this was a really big story at the time, and you can imagine in England.
A lot of the players, in the Scotland team would have been household names in England, absolutely, because you've got Joe Jordan, Kenny Dalglish, Bruce Rayk. It's all players that at least half the squad was made up of English first division players. So and some of them actually were English, really. So the old Anglo-Scottish thing as well. So you'd have been very familiar with it. So yeah, I think you're right.
You're absolutely right. That squad becomes, obviously Kenny Dalglish is probably the poster child of it. But beyond there, you have people who've been in English football for well established. We've got Martin Buchan and Willie Donaghy and Bruce Rioch and Don Mass and all these guys. But then you also had this Forest effect, didn't you, where you have John Robertson and Archie Gemmell and Kenny Burns. Kenny Burns, players or football writers player of the year. You know, he was player of the year.
I was amazed by that, but yeah, he was. Yeah, so you had Forest had just won the league, so Liverpool just won the European Cup. So yeah, I mean, great pedigree.
So before we get to the World Cup, we obviously have to talk about the qualification, those two qualification games, the first ones of Ally MacLeod. And they get the win at home to Czechoslovakia, which kind of puts them in pole position. And they go into their last game, which is against Wales, away at Wales. But Wales switched that game to Anfield. We had Mark Griffiths on from Wrexham on the pod, and I don't remember whether this made the final edit or not. He was explaining about quite a lot of frustration about the number of games that got moved away from the racecourse ground where Wales were pretty unbeatable. It does seem a weird decision to play it at Anfield, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think, even just think about Kenny Dalglish, he scored in front of the Kop there, in the crucial game. It seems absolutely crazy. I mean, and obviously quite a lot of connections, certainly, between Glasgow and Liverpool and so on. And it's not far either. It's not, I think Liverpool was completely taken over by the travelling fans. And certainly when I remembered it, watching it at the time, it felt very much like a home game for Scotland.
Yeah, commercial reasons why Wales moved the game. They wanted to maximise the potential because it was being built as the Battle of Britain, because either Wales or Scotland, or one of those two, were going to qualify for the World Cup. So it was kind of built this big battle for Britain. And I think the Welsh FA decided they wanted to capitalise on the potential. And as Stefan mentioned, they scored an own goal because they completely forgot that they would probably be outnumbered, and they were very outnumbered. I think the capacity was 45,000, and I mean, I've read accounts that there was potentially 35,000 Scottish fans inside Anfield that night. So they may have took their money, but they didn't get their World Cup, and they lost on the night. But not without its controversy, Graham, though, was it?
No, it certainly wasn't. The game was there were sort of chances at both ends. I think Scotland, having watched a fair chunk of the highlights, it feels that Scotland were probably created the clearer chances. But you get through to the last 15 minutes of the game or so, and it's still 0-0.
Yeah, so the game certainly ebbed and flowed. I mean, Wales were a pretty good team then as well. They had like John Toshak, Terry Yorath and stuff. Brian Flynn, they were a good team, and a great strip as well. I do remember that very vividly.
The strip is
it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think it's possibly the best strip there has ever been. I'm really struggling to see a better strip than that. We'll obviously put a picture on the social, but continuing the stripes down the shorts.
Yeah,
it's that attention to detail.
And you're absolutely right. And me and Jamie were talking about this earlier, that I loved it. I mean, do you have two better kind of number 9s than John Toshak at one end and Joe Jordan at the other? They are proper strikers, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. You can imagine corner kicks would have been interesting if they were marking each other.
Well, as it turns out, long throws are quite interesting as well, because there's although again, and he's going to pop up for other reasons. But I was absolutely staggered to see that the long throw is taken by Willie Johnson. I can never remember a winger with a long throw. A winger with a long throw? That never happens, does it?
No, absolutely not. It's a bit of a one-off, I think. I do remember it very well, picturing it, and it was impossible to tell, really, wasn't it?
It's part of this that I did I did find what I can only assume is BBC Scotland's commentary on the occasion, and they quite clearly, I think the phrase is, that's as clear a penalty as you'll ever see, decided. But you're absolutely right. It's one that, it's a bit like the 66 World Cup goal, did it cross the line or whatever. The thing about that is you want the footage to zoom closer in. You want to get a different angle of the handball. What's clear is they're both going to punch the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think George Orme was always a bit coy about it, wasn't he? I don't think he ever admitted or whatever. So, it was an unbelievable moment. I mean, sometimes that controversy is good. I mean, I suppose it's, if it goes for you, then it's great. But it makes the game so memorable, doesn't it? But I guess if you were Welsh, you'd have probably other opinions.
And then Dalglish gets a second to underline the win.
So that penalty that Don Masson took was, the amount of pressure he must have been under to kill this. I think he sent the keeper the wrong way, and that was a massive moment. And then the Kenny Dalglish goal was just absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's that overlapping, wasn't it? Overlapping Martin Buchan, and then fantastic cross, and then who else but Kenny Dalglish in front of the Kop, puts it away. I mean, absolutely brilliant.
It's a great. I don't really remember Dalglish scoring headers, but
no,
he obviously can do it.
He certainly connected with that one.
He absolutely justifies the commentary if it were ever used in that particular moment. He rose salmon-like, because it literally looks salmon-like. It's a fantastic header. It deserves every single syllable of he rose salmon-like.
It definitely does. It's just sort of tying into I suppose some of the hype that follows this. Joe Jordan was obviously a character because of his missing front teeth. I don't know. I do remember that there was a Heineken advert which had Joe Jordan refreshing the parts the other bit, and it was his teeth in the warm up was filling in his teeth after he'd had his pint of Heineken, and you're thinking, I mean, that's the level to which they've caught the imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. It was certainly fearsome looking, wasn't it? Once he took those teeth out.
Although he showed when he was assistant to Harry Redknapp, I think when he was at Tottenham, wasn't it? When Gattuso has a go, and Joe Jordan takes his glasses off. There was no more menacing thing. It's just the most statement of intent, and so Scotland qualifying. Jamie, I mean, you've done a small bit of research around this, because there is actual reason for why Scotland should have some optimism about it.
Yeah, there genuinely is. I mean, there's a couple of things going on here. I mean, the coverage, as we've already mentioned, is pretty high for the Scottish national team. The team are performing to a level where it's plausible that they can go to Argentina and be one of the favourites. And I think they were 10-1 to win the World Cup. I mean, you're in the territory of a France, say, an Argentina, a Belgium in our current day and age. But this predates FIFA rankings. FIFA rankings, which I find useful as a barometer of how you measure where teams are at that particular moment in time, didn't come in until the 1990s, early 1990s. And shortly after that, we had the ELO rankings, which is based on chess rankings, and they're slightly weighted differently, but they mean the same. What they do, they kind of tell you who is the best teams or what position they are ranked in world football. And what ELO have done, they've taken all of the international results from the dawn of time when England and Scotland first kicked off in the 1800s and the international football was born, right through to the current age. So we can tell where Scotland was ranked in 1978 going into this world tournament. And they were ranked as the fourth best team in world football, behind Argentina and Brazil, who they'd just played as well the summer before in a warm-up and narrowly lost to Brazil, but acquitted themselves exceptionally well in Brazil and drawn with Argentina, the host of the 78 World Cup that would 12 months later go on and win. So they're ranked fourth in the world. So this is a pretty decent Scottish football team. We've already talked about the quality of the players, but we now know from the ranking, the ELO ranking, they're ranked as fourth in the world. They're a tidy team.
They come at this off the back of, is it successive home international wins, isn't it? But we should probably explain to anyone under a certain age what the home internationals were. But that used to be, that was kind of a high point of football in my early days of following it, which was obviously this end of season 14 tournament between England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I think eventually the grudge matches between everyone got too much after a while. Who knew that if you have a series of local derbies played in the summer at the end of the season?
I think England-Scotland used to be like a week after the FA Cup final, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was the last game. And certainly in Scotland it was a huge deal. I'm not sure it was quite as big in England, but in Scotland it was, it was everyone would go around each other's house and watch the game together.
the home internationals began, just kind of give you a deeper interest, in 1884, and they ran right to 1984. So they're 100 years old in terms of their running. The 77 is marked as Scotland's final championship that they win. They do defend in 76, but then they don't pick up a championship after that. They're kind of distributed between England and Northern Ireland. But the 1977 championship is famous for the Wembley incident. So Scotland taking up most of the Wembley turf, the goalposts, and breaking the crossbar. They beaten England at Wembley 2-1 to win the 1977 home championship. And we've got that famous pictures that we've all seen, probably all of us seen, as any attachment to football, where Scotland just own Wembley.
Well, that's it. Moving on to the 78. I mean, the momentum was definitely building then, wasn't it? Absolutely. The team just seemed to be getting better and better. And the game against Czechoslovakia, I mean, European champions. That was the moment, I think, where we could do well here. Absolutely.
It is interesting when Ally MacLeod is when he's being interviewed beforehand, and he's kind of, I'd be disappointed if we don't get a medal. I don't think. I mean, it's obviously partly his style, but I think there is genuine. What you don't really work out is at what point it slips into not quite arrogant, because you need a degree of arrogance about it, but at what stage it slips into complacency.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, overconfidence. I think. Yeah, that's the danger, isn't it? I think the public were equally as enthusiastic, shall we say, as Ally MacLeod was, and the team all kind of fed off each other. Even me as a 11-year-old, I was pretty convinced we were going to do well. Really was. But yeah, I have an excuse. I had youth on my side, didn't I? So
that enthusiasm is incredible, because the send-off is sensational. It's something that I think is unprecedented in terms of the send-off the team are getting. And, they're being called onto the pitch individually at Hampden Park before their big send-off, which is fantastic. You're getting the whole nation getting behind the team, and they really are. I mean, when you watch the documentaries that have been made afterwards, the brilliant BBC one, A Love Story of 1978, you get a sense of how people in Scotland are really getting behind this team and believing that they are going to win, just like Ally MacLeod tells them, we're going to win this thing. And some of the stories of how, I mean, it's 1978, and you've got tens of thousands of, probably more than that, hundreds of thousands of Scottish football fans traveling to Argentina. It's incredible. Some of the journeys and some of the things that those guys and girls did to make that World Cup are extraordinary. They're selling businesses. There's one story where a gentleman flies to New York, and then from New York, he hitches buses, trains it to Cordoba. Now, that's an 18,000 kilometer journey. If you started that today and you were traveling at an average speed of around about 35 kilometers, that's being a kind of a loose average in 1978, it would take you 22 days to get there. And that's just from New York. So some of the way the country was getting behind them, that they were prepared to put their lives on hold to go and witness this incredible event and prioritize football in Scotland in a World Cup as the biggest priority of their life at that moment, is fantastic.
Those journeys are spectacular, and that's the other thing, because I think here we are in 2023. It's not easy to get to Argentina now.
No, I like the two guys who had mapped into South America, and like sort of A4 map, and that's what they used to get all the way from the very north of the country all the way down to Colombia, Peru,
I think.
Chile.
They landed in Trinidad and Tobago, and
they thought that was in South America, didn't they? I mean, it's an incredible journeys.
But the other thing that did was also remind me, probably one of the things with football becoming a little bit more cosmopolitan, I think is the word you'd use now, because it did used to be that European teams could mostly win the World Cup when it was in Europe. I mean, the South Americans, Brazil were good enough, Argentina, they could do it. But European teams couldn't win out in South America. I mean, that was like unheard of. Nobody could do that. And you forget the difference it would be for players playing over there. And certainly, you referenced the Scotland 78 Love Story documentary. And in there you get, it's really clear about the the challenges of the training conditions, the training pitch, the hotel. It's a totally different environment there, let alone being so far away from home.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it took Scotland it took like a couple of days to get there, really.
Yeah.
And by the time they got there, then the local town folk were wanting to greet them and have parties with them and stuff. They just wanted to crash out. And some of it is very interesting. Like the Scotland Hotel. This must have been before Expedia and stuff, because they booked into a hotel, it wasn't even finished yet. There was no carpet. There was no water in the swimming pool, and yes, you see the training ground was, it was just like some dusty old track somewhere. It kind of shows, I guess, just how sort of naive things were a little bit in those days. But also, I mean, maybe it wasn't completely unwelcome from the hosts, I suppose, as well. To put some of these obstacles in other teams' ways.
I dread to think what Roy Keane would have made of those training.
Stefan, you make a really good point about the home nation and welcoming the other 15 teams that are joining, because it's another topic for another day easily. But Argentina were run by the military at this particular moment. It's a dark period of time for not just Argentina, but just for FIFA and its relationships of how it works with certain countries that are hosting World Cups. But there was absolutely a volume of work going on to make Argentina win that World Cup. Undisputably, we've seen evidence of that now. It's easy to kind of point the finger at Scotland's preparation for the hotel and the training facilities, but we don't know in 1978 what information they were getting from the Argentinian hosts in order to prepare these teams, and it could be that they were just stacking the advantage as much as possible in the hosts, and that was definitely the case.
If the advantage is going to be stacked against you, one thing you might consider doing is watching the opposition teams.
Yeah, it does seem crazy now, but I mean, Ally MacLeod was very much of the opinion that he would spend his time preparing my team to be as good as possible, rather than worrying about the opposition. But yeah, that did seem very underprepared, really, even in those days, because you could easily, I'm sure you could easily go and watch Peru to try and work out who was going to take the free kicks, for example. That's one of the stories. Alan Ruff asked one of the defenders, "Well, are any of these guys good at free kicks?" Well, the answer is yes. As he shortly discovered.
So they do come up in that first game. They come up against Peru, continuing the theme of Scotland playing teams with fantastic kits. Another glorious kit that Peru won. A lovely sash in there, and actually, bizarrely, everything looks like it's going according to plan. Scotland go 1-up after, I think, 14, 15 minutes. Bruce Rioch scores. But it's certainly what I noticed looking back, and I was too young at the time to really understand much about the debate. At the time, there was obviously a lot of debate about who would play in midfield. He stuck by Don Masson and Bruce Rioch. But they also think it's only one defender plays all three games. He seems to change the defence up every week. And they'd have been missing Danny McGrain. He was injured, and I assume Danny McGrain would have been a first choice in that team.
I think that is true. I can even vaguely remember back about the debate. It was very much the midfield was should he stick with the guys who got them through the qualifying, who did such a great job, but who were they were getting on a bit, and there were certainly signs that they were could get overrun in midfield, certainly. Or bring in, like, as you say, Graham Souness, such again, we'll bring in the guys who are doing it at the very top level. I think that was a dilemma MacLeod had, really. Because Scotland had a terrible home international. England beat them at Hampden to kind of dampen things a little bit. And he played something like 20 different players. He tried to play every player in the squad, I think. It certainly smacks that, you get into the World Cup and you've got 3 games to go. You really do want to start honing in on your best 11. And I think the problem was that, yes, I don't think MacLeod really knew, certainly in the midfield, who it was. And I think there was a lot of debate in Scotland as well, absolutely.
Does have a bit of bad luck as well, because Gordon McQueen is established himself in that defence at that particular moment. He's just moved recently from Leeds United to Manchester United for $500,000 at the time, so it's a big sum of money. Wow. And he gets injured, and he probably shouldn't have even been taken to the 78 World Cup finals. But I think because the hope for MacLeod was, and he was definitely an eternal optimist, this guy, that maybe Gordon McQueen could get fit and could be available to play. So losing him at the beginning is, again, it's one of those kind of like, we're just not getting the rubber things. I mean, injuries are part and parcel of World Cup finals, but when you lose a player that you probably have earmarked to be one of your two centre backs, it does change your plans a little bit.
And it's fair to say the Peru goals are quite good.
Yeah, I was actually really, I mean, I knew Peru were quite good. From my memory, I thought it was quite an even match and we were really unlucky. I did look at the highlights recently, and Peru were a great team. I mean, 3 cracking goals they scored. And that Cubillas was, I mean, what a player he was. He went on to be named in the team of the tournament in the midfield. He was absolutely brilliant. And the free kick especially was just, you expect him to use the other foot, really. No matter how many times you see it, he's still amazing.
The free kick is something else. I mean, for anyone who's not seen it, it is literally the last thing you're expecting. I don't think I've ever seen anyone take a free kick and bend it with the outside of their foot the other way around the wall. It's just...
Yeah, and it obviously had been planned in training because one other guy's like runs over the ball, doesn't he? So it was a really good move. It did kind of wrong foot Alan Ruffin for it. So.
It is absolutely in right foot territory. It's the, that kind of in swinger. Everything says to you that this is going to be, with the right foot, but the way he positions his body is almost, so you can see why Alan Ruffin is fairly confused, but it's genius and it's so precise to kind of go the other side of the wall. And, it's Roberto Carlos-esque almost.
It also sets what, to my mind, becomes very much a theme I largely remember, which is of Scotland at World Cups, which is Alan Rough being beaten from distance.
Yeah, well, I have to say I have a vested interest because obviously I'm a big Partick Thistle fan, and to have a player in the Scotland squad was amazing, really, and not just that, but he was unarguably the first name down in the team sheet. So, so no, I'm sorry, but no, I can't agree with you there, Graham. It was a fantastic keeper. And he used to have plenty of practice playing for Thistle, that's for sure.
Definitely. So yeah, I was going to say he must be Partick Thistle's.
I was looking down, like you say, looking for the Scotland squad, and it's all your top-notch teams. Really, it is like a roll call. The only interesting thing is, yes, you've got a player in there from Partick Thistle, and there was no players from Celtic at all in the squad, which I guess seems surprising, but it was a transitional time for them.
Yeah, that is incredible, isn't it?
Danny McGraham would definitely, you're right, if he had been injured, and he might have made a big difference.
Yeah, a lot of experience there in the defence, certainly. It certainly gave the impression you can, again, Peru, good side, used to playing football in Latin America in that climate. So Scotland seemed pretty underprepared and a bit taken aback by it. It's obviously then made worse by what happens with Willie Johnston at the end of the game. So Willie Johnston gets picked out to do for the drugs test afterwards, and he's taking a pill for a cold or so forth, isn't it? Supposedly so. Now, Willie Johnston is a player who wasn't immune to controversy over his career, I guess.
No, I think he'd been banned quite a few times in his when he played for Rangers. He pretty much, I think, had to kind of move south because he such huge bans, and I don't think that the SFA wanted MacLeod to pick him at all because he did have that reputation. I mean, an absolute brilliant winger, but very prone to retaliation. I mean, he got sent off something like 20 times in his career, and I think all of them were for retaliation, pretty much. He was that kind of character. So I think it was quite controversial. MacLeod obviously stood by him, but they just certainly didn't, once the scandal broke, they didn't give him any help at all. They basically smuggled him out of the hotel, and then armed guards took him onto the plane, and that was him basically for the next 3 days until he got home.
This is kind of and we've seen this, we've certainly seen this at more recent England teams at tournaments where, the hype is so much, it builds up. But the moment things don't go right, and definitely an element that there is so much media attention in Scotland at this World Cup.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the thing is as well, so I think it was one of the first World Cups where the tabloids were sending their news reporters to find stories, whereas previously it'd been very much the sports writers would go along with the teams, and there was that level of trust built up, and they would socialise together and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is kind of the start probably of that culture of let's try to get the story on the front pages rather than the back pages type thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid point, Stefan, because this goes back to what's going on in Argentina. And it was definitely seen in the Western world as an opportunity to expose that. So a lot of journalists would have gone, as you rightly say, to Argentina, not really interested in the football, but more interested in what else was going on in Argentina, so they could exploit that story or bring it to bring it to the rest of the world. And I think that's part of the problem for Argentina, because Argentina thought they would host the World Cup and it would generally be a big success story, and their way of living and culture would be kind of transported around the world. But when you invite the whole world press into your country, you're going to
Who
be
knew
exposed
that's not
to
going to
what's
work
going on.
out? There's no lessons to be learned.
It really is a solid point that Stefan makes of that, because it's such an important part of what was going on in this particular period.
You're right. It did remind me, Graham, of as you said, I think it was the Germany World Cup when England were on such intense scrutiny all the time.
Yeah, you can see it. It's the moment it turned. So that wave of optimism is great until something doesn't go right, and then the wheels start to come off, and you can just tell by the time. Now again, going into the game against Iran, who should really be the whipping boys of that group. Again, arguably, maybe watching Iran would have been a useful thing to do before the game. But certainly in that game, you can see it feels like a confusion and just mentally, then they don't seem in the right place to play that game almost.
No, it's a really bizarre game. I remember the time thinking it was a strange one, really. And looking at the highlights again, it is weird because, Peru, 100% underestimated, and actually they were a really good team. Iran, I'm still not really sure what happened there. Obviously the Scotland players were out of sorts. I'm not sure watching Iran before would have made much difference. It was very much England-Iceland sort of type performance, I thought. Where it's actually, Scotland just played absolutely awful and could not string two passes together. And it's painful viewing again. I think that's it's a lot worse than the Peru one for me, really, just because what went wrong. With that bizarre own goal.
The own goal is fantastic, though, isn't it? It's absolutely. There's not a Scotland player near. There's about three Iran players and a keeper, and a ball bouncing around. I can't find a Scotland player in the frame, let alone.
I think possibly that Iranian player had been paying attention to Scotland's British home championships that summer as well, because Willie Donachie scores a bizarre own goal where there's not a Welsh player anywhere near. So I think maybe the Iranians did their homework on Scotland for actually this is the tactics we need to adopt. But I think to balance it out a little bit, Iran. I've talked about the ELO rankings. Iran were ranked 23rd in the world at the time. So, that's not a pushover. That's the equivalent of going into the 2002 World Cup of Belgium playing Wales. Now, you would expect Belgium to win that, but you would expect it to be a tough game. And Iran were ranked one place. One place is very little in FIFA rankings. 20 places could be very little in ELO rankings, sorry. But Iran were ranked one place ahead of Peru. So, Scotland's, for all of its problems, they've still got an opponent that can play football and is in the World Cup finals on its own right.
Yeah, and I think possibly panic has moved on a little bit as well. I think the 3-1 defeat from Peru was just such a big shock to the system that you could just tell the players in the Iran match are just so nervous, even touching the ball or anything. There's so much pressure now. You've really got to win that game, or else you're out really.
Yeah, otherwise you end up having to go into the last game against Holland, who runners up in the last tournament. They're going to be runners up in this one. They got to the semi-finals of the European Championship. Obviously, you want to get a result against Iran, because what are the chances of you beating Holland by 3 clear goals?
Exactly. You need some kind of miracle, wouldn't you, really?
And of course, it so nearly happens. Now, he does change the team up. He does bring Souness in, which is seen as a real difference maker. But not to make things difficult for themselves, Scotland go a goal behind. So at this point, the task now is 4 goals. It's just not on. There's no, and especially when, and we didn't really talk about it, but the sort of famous thing of that Iran game is really the footage of Ally MacLeod's body language on the bench. But just sat on the bench with his head in his hands. It's like,
yeah, absolutely. "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" kind of headline wrote itself, didn't it? Really?
Yeah. So you would have no optimism for it really going in there. But this is where Scotland have been subsequently several times, where all hope is lost, and then suddenly it sort of kicks in.
I think, as you said, they started the game fairly poorly. They'll go down, and the momentum built, and Scotland get into the game. I think they hit the bar. And,
yeah, they got a penalty in half time to level things. No, not a penalty. I think the penalty came in the second half.
Dalglish scored, didn't he?
Another fantastic
Dalglish
goal.
scores.
He gets his leg over. It's fantastic.
Very good.
But Scotland, I think, it's beautiful on YouTube. You can watch the whole game, and I've watched the first half. And Scotland do actually start quite well. Within 5 minutes they've hit the woodwork. They've then had a goal disallowed after 7 minutes, and the footage that you can watch on YouTube, it looks a perfectly good goal. And coincidentally, you've got Jack Taylor, who was the World Cup referee in the 1974 World Cup final, sitting on the panel, BBC Grandstand. Yeah, way before Peter Walton was doing it on BT Sport.
Oh, excellent.
So you got Jack Taylor giving his views on this. And there's also a second goal disallowed as well. I think Dalglish gets one, Jordan gets one. Jordan should have had a penalty. And this all happens before the Dutch get their penalty and score. But the debate, this is a brilliant part. I encourage you to go watch this. You can watch the debate. You've got Jock Stein, the brilliant Jock Stein, Laurie McMenemy, and you've got this wonderful Jimmy Hill. I mean, obviously he had that beautiful chin, but he's now got this tailored beard that comes and hangs off his chin. He's got the cravat on. He really does look like he's going to go to a jazz concert straight after footage. He's dressed so well. And whilst Jack Taylor is criticising the referee openly on television, live television, which you can imagine the effect that would have had on how you were feeling emotionally. You feel that you've had a penalty and now you've got a former World Cup referee telling you, yeah, you should have had a penalty. You're going to be going crazy, right? So you're palpable almost. And then Laurie McMenemy defends the referee. I won't embarrass myself. I do too many accents on this and I shouldn't do them at all, really. But in his strong Geordie accent, he's like, people make bad decisions, and if you're a good driver and you knock someone over, does that make you a bad driver? He literally uses that as an example to the referee. It's fantastic viewing.
Oh, I'm definitely watching that. So they get their penalty relatively early into that second half for 2-1. Archie Gemmill takes this one, and then I think it is one of the great World Cup goals. I think I struggle to think of many better than this. Gemmill takes out 5 players with that, with really sort of only 2 moves.
And the bit I remember as well was Dalglish loses the ball, and I can just remember us shouting at the telly at the time in disappointment that Dalglish has lost possession, and then it breaks the game on. And then from then on, even at the time, it seemed like slow motion because it's kind of the Dutch defenders are really are all over the place, and they're diving in, aren't they? And he's just so calm. He's like he's on a different space time, sort of whatever. He just takes his time, doesn't he? And I think one of the best bits is right at the end where he almost pauses and lifts it over the keeper, and it's just such a cool finish. It's just amazing.
Those first couple of touches where you're right, Graham, he takes out the whole of the Dutch back line. Then he does a wonderful nutmeg. It's gorgeous, and plants the Dutch defender on his backside. And then, as Stefan's talked about, it is almost like you're watching it in slow motion because he then starts shaping his body around the ball. His head's up. He's got Dalglish to his left. He could tap it to Dalglish, and Dalglish has got to tap it. But he's in such, as Stefan mentions, he's in so control. His body then tells you exactly what he's going to do. But by this point, the keeper's already committed. Train Spotting did a fantastic job of showcasing how that goal is felt.
I'm glad you got the Train Spotting reference in before me. It's a classic, absolutely.
Other than the ultimate disappointment, is actually that moment of belief. At this point, Scotland only need one more goal, and that the window of belief isn't longer. It's I think it's 75 minutes. Gemmill scores, and then within 3-4 minutes is it Johnny Rep?
Yeah, absolute superb strike. Unfortunately, 30 yards or something, wasn't it? And it just absolutely flew in. I don't know where the Dutch toying with this. I suppose there's always those debates, isn't there? It's a shame, like you say, 3 or 4 minutes of we're going to do it to oh my goodness, we're not. Reality bites,
Having gone into it with such a high, and being greeted as, this fanfare on the way back. It's a very low key return by the time they come back. And MacLeod stays. He stays on for a few months and for another game, but it's clear that
I don't know what that was about. It must have been some contract thing, probably. Yeah, I think he stayed on for the first qualifier, didn't he, of the European Championship, and then he went. I think in total he was only in charge for 17 matches or something.
Yeah,
that seems amazing, really, because it's so memorable to pack so much in such a short reign. Is quite amazing.
It is incredible when you think of Scotland managers. He weirdly is right up there, isn't he? I mean, you kind of remember Craig Brown and you remember Jock Stein. I sort of remember Andy Roxburgh, but I wouldn't have thought, well, maybe. But Ally MacLeod is one of the first people you think of.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Because it's so memorable. And like I said earlier, it's very much certainly in my time watching football, I've never felt so sort of enthused about Scotland's chances whenever they qualify. In fact, now I'm actually, I find that it's almost a mixed blessing because we're pretty much guaranteed to be also rans, when we get there, which is a bit of a shame because that certainly was the one time where actually we weren't just also rans. We did, we potentially did have a chance realistically.
Do you think this is a step change in Scottish football history? Because you're absolutely right, because Scotland has always had a wonderful reputation in football. I mean, the English get the credit of giving the game, but the Scots very much participated in this from the very beginning. And the Scots are accredited for giving us the passing game. The game changed from that moment. And in 1978, as we've discussed, Scotland were one of the best teams in international football. Their reputation had been strong to that point. Their club sides had been winning European champions trophies in Celtic just 10 years previously, and Rangers a few years before that. Do you think, and slightly cheeky on my behalf, so forgive me, but you've got the 1978 World Cup theme tune, Andy Cameron, Ally's Tartan Army. You've got a comedian singing this song, this brilliant football song, where you're going to win the World Cup. And then just 20 years later, the 98 World Cup, Delamitri, not a comedian. Just, the official song is just "Don't Come Home Too Soon." Do you think this period in time for Scotland, by not qualifying for the second phase of a World Cup, is a step change where the reputation starts to change?
It was almost after the 78 World Cup. I mean, everyone was so down in the dumps, so dismal, and not just that. It was quite embarrassing, really. I remember at the time, God, yeah, everybody really was. It was so disillusioned with it all. And then, yes, I mean, Scotland still, that was the second of 5 consecutive qualifications for World Cups, which is a fantastic record for a relatively small country. But I think with each one that we qualify, probably diminishing returns. And yeah, it got more realistic. That's for sure by the time Delamitri came along.
Delamitri, I'd like to think the brief on that was, we're really after, we want to manage expectations with this, Del.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I might rework that chorus. It is an extraordinary change of fortune, but you're absolutely right. It's kind of, I think actually that Scotland side has created some unbelievable memories, especially that performance against Holland. But they do come back chastened. Not for the first time as we've seen. They're almost, that hype gets too much, and it then creates expectations you can't live up to.
That's right, but it's amazing times, and it's great. It's great to look back at it now from X number of years later as well. And yeah, it was good to have had it. That's for sure, because just to actually have that enthusiasm and they were a really good team.
So we should come to rank this team's place in history. We have 5 categories: all-time greats right at the top, true greats, touch of greatness in the middle, edge of greatness, and then the blinkered greats. Oh, this is going to be an interesting one. Jamie, I'll let you go first.
Thank you very much. Everything on the surface points towards edge of greatness, but I'm completely dismissing that because I'm going beyond the surface, and I'm taking into the context that this was a very good, if not brilliant, international football team. We've talked about the stars that they had playing, from European Cup winners, current European Cup winners to be, and a few brilliant Manchester United players as well mixed in with that, and a brilliant Partick Thistle goalkeeper, by the way. So edge of greatness for me would be unfair. They've also, as we've talked about, they've beaten the current European champions, Czechoslovakia, and we've talked about how brilliant that team were in beating the Netherlands and West Germany to win that tournament, that 14 tournament in 1976. I think we could pick holes in the preparation, we could pick holes in the euphoria, but it's a World Cup, and colour TV is in its third World Cup, and TV is becoming the new audience of watching football. So it's completely understandable that euphoria. We see it all the time for the smallest things now. It's a crazy world, and why you can't blame people for being carried away and getting excited about something. I think everything tells me, as much as I'd want to rank this team as an all-time great, I think the fact that they weren't able to just do that one thing that no Scottish team yet has been able to do and get beyond the first phase of a World Cup finals, and I like to think in my lifetime I will see that. So I'm ranking this team as true greats to get us started, Graham.
Right.
Second
great.
bracket.
Loving it.
Yes.
Stefan, what do you think?
I'm very, very flattered by that. Actually, I had very much slightly less ranking. I mean, I would have went probably for a touch of greatness, as in they did touch great heights. Absolute that Wales game. I mean, when the pressure was on, absolutely brilliant. You couldn't really ask for a better qualifying game than that. And then, you know, the bittersweet game against Holland, which just to me just sums up that is football for you. You know, long suffering fans, you hit these peaks and these troughs, but I mean, very rarely within 3 minutes of each other. And for all the great players. So for me, yeah, I'm going to, you know, the all-time Scotland teams they're definitely the best that I've seen. I would go with touch of greatness.
We did Zaire on, and I think me and Jamie both attempted to push Zaire up the food chain. We had Shane was our guest on that one. He said, "Blink, great. They're the bottom category. No, you can't. They can see it all." And I'm trying to, you know, it is difficult to think of the team that churned out that 1-1 with Iran can have any level of greatness, but the narrative attached to this team is just fantastic. There's a sense of drama throughout everything, right from that qualification stage, which just makes them incredibly watchable. It's weird, and to your point. Well, both of your points. This was a really, you know, they were very good players. They had really good players in amongst it. I would definitely say Scotland's best team that they've produced ever, and I just think they're entertainers. I like you, Jamie. I can't go as far as true greats. That's just madness, clearly. But I quite like touch of greatness for Scotland. Quite like touch of greatness for the smile they can't help but put on your face. I think. Scotland 78, Ally's Tartan Army, touch of greatness. So one last thing, we have the opportunity to go back to the time machine, going back to 1978 or earlier, I guess. Jamie, let's start with you. If you could go back to anywhere in that Scotland campaign, the World Cup, well, where are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's a few obvious candidates that we've already talked about. You could go back to the 77 match at Wembley and witness some incredible history there. You've got the Archie Gemmell goal, which is one of the best, as you mentioned, one of the best goals in World Cup history. Quite comfortably, I think it's definitely in the top 10. But I'm pretty secure where I want to go to. So I'm thinking of the fan that sold his business, that's traveled to Trinidad and Tobago or traveled to New York, and then through this blissful ignorance has decided to hitchhike their way down to Cordoba in Argentina, thinking it would only take a couple of days. It probably turned out to take a couple of weeks, if not more. And they've made this long, arduous journey. I can't imagine the places they would have slept, the food they would have ate in order to make that journey. the consequences of their actions that they're going to have to face when they get back home in July, August, and they've got to Cordoba and they're at the first game, and all of the hype that has lived up to that Scotland team at that point is absolutely believed when Joe Jordan scores that first goal. The relief that fan must have had when that first goal goes in, to think everything we've done has been worth it to this point. It goes a bit pear-shaped after that, as we discussed, but I'd want to go back to that moment and feel the euphoria of what that must have felt like as a football fan, traveling that distance to see your home nation play in a World Cup finals, the other side of the world.
Yeah, I like that. Stefan, where would you want to go back to?
That's a great answer, I have to say. That's brilliant. I mean, I had the only candidates are kind of obvious one. The Dalglish goal against Wales was brilliant. One thing we haven't mentioned there was a turning point in that match. I don't know if you watched the highlights, and that's when Alan Rough does a great save from Toshak. It tips the ball onto the bar, and to me that was the turning point of the match. Forget the handball. For me, that was a great moment. But maybe I'm slightly biased. But to me, it's got to be the miracle of Mendoza. It really has. Archie Gemmell's goal. Just even now, it gives me joy.
I think for me, I want to get really to grips and see firsthand two of the great bits. So I would either want to be right behind at Anfield, right behind the goal, just so I can get a first-hand view on that punch. You know, which arm got there first. But equally, I'd quite like to be, if I could get a seat right behind Alan Rough for the free kick with the outside of the boot, just to see that angle. It's just an extraordinary. I was absolutely bowled over by that free kick. Absolutely incredible. But really, it should be there for Gemmell's goal. But it's good to mix it up. Okay, we should leave it there. Stefan, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that. It's been a trip down memory lane, and so many bright spots, so many just interesting, isn't it? And it's been great. So thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
It's been great to have you on. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Graham and Stefan. Yeah, thanks again. It's absolutely brilliant. I really love this football team that we talked about, and having your first-hand accounts as a youngster, getting behind them have been absolutely wonderful to listen to. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been a really good one. That's all we've got time for this time. As a reminder, do subscribe to the podcast if you want to get a fresh episode every Thursday. Will come to you into your inbox. But that's all we have time for now. You can, of course, contact us on our social channels at By Far the Greatest FC, or via myself and Jamie at Said and Done, and at Couch Pundito on what most people still know as Twitter. We'd love to know any recommendations of other teams that you'd like us to cover on this, and we'll speak again soon.